Hello guys, and welcome to another sewing tutorial. My name is Ihuoma Judith, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this trending asymmetric waistline gathers dress. So if this is something you're interested in and you would love to know how to make, then let's get right into the video. So I've gone ahead and I've drafted out my basic bodice pattern, and I've already posted a video of how I drafted this basic bodice pattern. So if you have not seen it, you should go ahead and watch it so that you will know how we came about this pattern, okay? So this is my front pattern and this is my back pattern. So this full length that I marked here is my hip length, okay? So from my waist to that full length is also my hip length, okay? So on my front pattern, I'm going to go ahead and make some tiny adjustments, okay? This is optional. So from the bust line, on that nipple to nipple line, I went out by 0.75, so that is where my dart is going to start from, okay? So instead of my dart to start from that my nipple to nipple line that we marked earlier, it's going to start from that 0.75, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead now with my ruler and connect the mark to the 2 inches line, okay? So I made these adjustments because I don't want my bust point to look pointy, okay? So like I said, this is optional. So I'm going to go ahead and keep my back pattern piece so that we can work with the front pattern, okay? So I've gone ahead and connect the new mark to the line, okay? So now the next thing we are going to do is that new line, that slanted line that we have formed, we are going to go ahead and fold it to meet our bust line like this. So go ahead and gently fold in that slanted line to meet the bust line like this. So if you have done that, you're going to be getting something like this. So after that, I just used my pin to pin it down to hold the 2 lines together like this, okay? So go ahead and pin it down. So we are going to go ahead and trace out the side of the bodice to balance the shortage, okay? So you go ahead with a piece of paper like this, and you're going to go ahead and put it under the bodice like this. So you're going to use your marker and first of all trace out that shortage, okay? So trace it down till you get to the under bust, or better off, trace it down till you meet the waistline, okay? But here I stopped at the under bust, so I'm going to go ahead after tracing it out and pin down the chest line of my bodice to the paper, as you can see, and I'm going to go ahead and open up my bust point line, removing that pin, okay? So I've opened it up. You're going to be getting something like this. So I'm going to use my marker to trace out that line that we drew to meet the under bust like this. So if we had traced out that line to meet the waistline earlier, then there will be no need to trace it out again. But since we stopped at the under bust, I'm just going to use my marker to connect it now to meet the under bust properly, okay? So this extra space on the side bodies is so that when we hold our dart, it's not going to still short our measurement, okay? So I'm going to just go ahead and pin the both patterns together, and with my scissors I went ahead to cut out the new lines that I drew, okay? So go ahead and do the same for yours. So after that, on that slanted line, I'm just going to go ahead and just mark out the middle of that slanted line, okay? So with my ruler, I'm just going to go ahead and draw a straight line to meet my bust line, marking the center. Just do exactly what I'm doing, okay? And with that, we are done with the adjustment for the front piece, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and transfer this pattern on my fabric. Okay guys, so I've gone ahead and I've folded my fabric into 2 like this. So we'll be cutting our fabric on fold, and the fabric I'm making use of is a crepe fabric, okay? So I'll go ahead now and place my pattern on it like this, and I'm going to go ahead and pin it down. Okay guys, so I've pinned down my pattern on my fabric like this. So I'll go ahead and cut through, adding my sewing allowance on the neckline, on the shoulder line, and the armhole line. And also remember that when we drafted this pattern, we did not add a sewing allowance on the side of our dress. So I'll also add my sewing allowance on the side of my dress. So I went ahead to use my chalk to trace out my sewing allowance, as you can see. So on the full length, I'm going to go ahead and add extra 2 inches because I want my dress to be longer than this, okay? But if you're okay with your full length, you can go ahead and just add your stitching allowance of about ½ an inch. But because I want my dress a little bit longer, I added extra 2 inches, okay? So now I'm going to just go ahead and connect the marks together so you can see what it looks like. Okay guys, so this is it after tracing out my lines. So I'm going to go ahead now and cut through the lines, creating my front bodice. Okay, so while cutting, follow your line. So this is it, we are finished cutting out our front bodice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and trace out our dart on the main fabric. So with my ruler, I'm going to go ahead and extend the lines on my pattern to the fabric. So this is going to help give us a guide of how our dart is going to be. So on the bust line, I extended my line. So just go ahead and do the same thing that I'm doing, okay? So go ahead and extend the line. I also extended my line on my under bust, on my waistline, and I also extended my nipple to nipple line like this, okay? So go ahead and do the same thing for yours, all right? Okay, so here I'm just measuring the distance of my dart from my full length, and as you can see, it's 5 inches. So I'm going to be making use of it, okay? So I'm going to go ahead now and remove my pins from my pattern so we can work on the main fabric. Okay, so now that I've removed my pattern paper, I'm going to go ahead now and extend my lines. So I'm going to extend my bust line. I'm also going to go ahead and extend my under bust line. Okay, so if you're confused, you can use your pattern paper as your guide. Okay, so I also go ahead and extend my waistline. All right, okay, so this is how to make sure that the lines on your fabric is aligning with the lines on your pattern paper. Okay, so go ahead and properly place it like this, as you can see, and our lines are rhyming properly. So now I'll go ahead and transfer my nipple to nipple line on my pattern paper to my fabric. Remember that my nipple to nipple line is 3.5 inches that I marked on the pattern paper. So I'll go ahead and remark it on my fabric like this. So go ahead and mark your nipple to nipple on your bust line, on your under bust line, on your waistline. Okay, and you're going to go ahead with your ruler and connect the lines together, drawing a straight line. Okay, so go ahead and do the same like this. Okay, so now that we are done, the next thing we are going to do is on our bust point line, we are going to go down on that nipple to nipple line by 0.75 inches like we did on our pattern paper. And also on the bust point line, I still went out by 0.75 inches. And from my full length, I went up by 5 inches like we measured earlier. That is going to be where my darts will end. And on our waistline, I'm going to still go out by 0.75 inches on both sides. And I'm going to go ahead and connect the marks together. We are just repeating the same thing that we did on our pattern paper. Okay, so with my ruler, I'm just going to go ahead and connect that 0.75 inches that we marked on the waistline to the 0.75 inches that we marked on our nipple to nipple line under our bust point like this. And also we'll go ahead and connect that 0.75 inches mark on our waistline to that 5 inches mark that we gave on our nipple to nipple line like this. Okay, and we are going to go ahead and do that on the both sides like this. I hope you're not confused. Okay, so you can use your pattern paper and make sure that you're doing exactly the same thing. Okay, and with that, we have created our dart. So now the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead and connect our bust dart. So from that underline that we drew on the side of our bodice, we are going to go ahead and connect it to that 0.75 inches that we went out on our bust line. Okay, so with my ruler, I'm going to go ahead and connect the marks together, drawing that slanted line. Okay, so now that we are done creating our dart on this side of our bodice, we're also going to go ahead and transfer it to the other side. Okay, remember that we are going to be having 2 darts on the front bodice of our dress. Okay, so what I went ahead to do was, with my pin, I went ahead to pin down my bust point line like this. I also pinned down my under bust line and also my waistline. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over, and as you can see, the pin is coming through on the other side. So with my ruler, I'm just going to go ahead and rule a straight line on those pin marks, extending our lines on the other side. Okay, so I'll go ahead and rule a straight line on the bust point line like this, on my under bust point like this, and on my waistline. Also, make sure that you're taking your dart on the wrong side of your fabric like this. Okay, so on the part that is going to be inside, that is where you're going to be taking all these measurements on. Okay, so from the center front, like I did on the other side, I'm going to go ahead and mark my nipple to nipple line on my bust point line, on my under bust point line, and also on my waistline, and also straight down. and I'm going to go ahead with my ruler and connect the marks together like this, drawing a straight line. Okay, so after that we're going to go ahead now and create our dots like we did the other side. Okay, so just repeat the same thing that we did on the other side of our dress to this side of our dress. There's no difference. So go ahead and create the side dot and also the bust dot. Okay, so now that we are done, this is what it's going to be looking like. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the pins and keep this aside so we can work on the back pattern. Okay guys, so this is the back pattern. Okay, so you go ahead and place it on your fabric. Here I was trying to experiment with this pattern paper, but somehow I changed my mind, and this is it. So I went ahead to just sellotape that place that I tore open. Okay, so like I said, just go ahead and fold your fabric into two like this and place your pattern paper on it. Okay guys, so as you can see, I've placed my pattern paper on my fabric like this, and I'm going to go ahead and cut through the same way we did on the front pattern. Okay, so as you can see, I've gone ahead and I've added my sewing allowance all around my fabric. So I went ahead to do the same thing we did on the front pattern. I added 1/2 inch on the neckline, on the shoulder line, and also on the armhole line, while on the side of our dress I added 1.7 inches, and the downside, because I wanted to increase the length, I added extra 2 inches, the same way we did on the front piece. Okay, so I went ahead with my scissors and cut through the lines like this. Okay, and with that, we have cut out the back pattern on our fabric. I'm going to go ahead and transfer my dart to my fabric. So I went ahead to extend my nipple to nipple line, my chest line, my bust line, and my waistline. And I'm going to go ahead and unpin my pattern paper from my fabric so we can mark through those lines. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and I've marked through my lines on my fabric. So like we did on the pattern paper, on the waistline, we are going to still go in by 0.75 on both sides like this. So from the full length, we are going to go up by 5 inches on that nipple to nipple line. That is going to be where our dart is going to end. Okay, and also on the back piece, we are going to go ahead and start our dart from the chest line like we did on our pattern paper. So we are going to go ahead now and connect the marks together, creating our dart. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process on the other side of my back piece. Remember that we cut this back piece into two, the left and the right side. Okay, also make sure that you're taking your dart on the wrong side of your fabric. Okay guys, so as you can see, I've gone ahead and I've drawn my dart on my two back piece. So now we're going to just go ahead and join the fabrics together, right side facing the right side like this, and we're going to go ahead and cut out our turnover for the neckline. Okay, so go ahead and place it together like this. So for my turnover, I went ahead to bring out a piece of my fabric like this, and I'm going to go ahead and fold it into two like this, and you're going to go ahead and place the neckline of your back piece on it like this. So make sure that it's all properly balanced like this, and after that, I'm just going to go ahead now with my scissors and trace out the shape of my neckline. And on the shoulder line, I'm going to just go few inches on that shoulder line. Okay, so I'll just remove my main fabric like this, and I'm just going to just measure out how I want the shape of my turnover to be. Okay, so I want my turnover fabric to just be 2 inches wide, so I'm just going to go ahead and measure out 2 inches all around the neckline and the shoulder line like this, and I'm just going to go ahead and trace it out. Okay, and this is it after tracing it out. So I'm just going to use my scissors and cut through my line. I'm also going to just go ahead and open up that fold. And with that, I've created 2 turnovers for my back piece neckline. So now the next thing we are going to do is we're going to take one of the turnover piece and place it on the neckline of one of the back piece like this, right side facing the right side, and we are going to go ahead and pin it down. So after pinning it down, we are going to go ahead and sew round the neckline by 1/2 inch like this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other back piece like this. So I went ahead to mark round my neckline by 1/2 inch. So I'll go to my sewing machine and sew on that line. Okay, so now for the front piece, we are also going to go ahead and cut a turnover for the neckline. Okay, so remember that our front piece is still on fold. So I went ahead to bring a piece of fabric like this, and I'll go ahead and place the fabric on fold. And we are going to go ahead now and place the front piece neckline on the fabric like this. Okay, so now that we have properly placed it, we're also going to go ahead now and trace out the neckline like we did on the back piece. Okay, and we are going to also go few inches on the shoulder line like this, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the front piece like this. Okay, so on that turnover, I'm going to go ahead and measure all around the neckline by 2 inches. Okay, so that is how wide I want my turnover to be. So I'll go ahead and mark it all around and trace it out. So with my scissors now, I'm going to go ahead and follow up that line and cut through. Okay, and with that, we have cut out our turnover for the front piece. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and place the turnover on our front piece neckline. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my front piece like this, and we're going to go ahead and place the turnover right side facing the right side and pin it down. Okay guys, so I also went ahead to mark out my 1/2 inch sewing allowance around the neckline. So I'll go ahead to my sewing machine and sew that down. Okay guys, so this is it. So I've gone ahead and I've sewed down the turnover on my front piece neckline like this. So I'm going to go ahead now and create tiny notches on that 1/2 inch joining. Okay, so go ahead with your scissors and create tiny notches like this. Make sure that you don't cut through that joining. Okay, so now I'm done creating my tiny notches. So I'm going to open up my turnover fabric like this, pushing the joining allowance to the turnover fabric like this, and you're going to go ahead and sew on that turnover fabric. So for my 2 back piece, I'm basically going to go ahead and do the same thing. So on the neckline like this, we're going to go ahead and create tiny notches on it, and we are going to go ahead and open up our turnover fabric like this, and we are going to go ahead and sew all around the neckline on that turnover fabric, just the same thing that we did on the front piece. Okay guys, so this is how the front piece is looking like after stitching down the turnover, and as you can see, our 1/2 inch joining is facing that turnover fabric. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead now and relax my fabric like this, and I'm going to go ahead and iron it down. Okay, so that stitching that we did is to just make the neckline more relaxed. So go ahead and iron down the neckline properly. Okay, so also add your hemming gum if you have an hemming gum to keep it more in place. Okay, and also I went ahead to do the same thing on my 2 back piece. As you can see, we have stitched it down looking more relaxed, so we are going to go ahead and also iron it down to keep the neckline in place. Okay guys, so this is what you should be getting after properly ironing the neckline. So this is how the front piece is going to be looking like, very relaxed. I also added my hemming gun to keep it in place. I also went ahead to iron down the neckline of my 2 back piece, as you can see, and I also added my hemming gum to keep it more relaxed. Okay, so if I turn over my back piece to the front, this is what the neckline is also going to be looking like. Okay, very relaxed. So after we are done, the next thing that we are going to do is to go ahead and hold our darts. Okay, so now for the back piece, I'm going to go ahead now and fold my fabric into 2 like this on that nipple to nipple line that we drew, and I'm going to go ahead and follow that my dart line and sew. And I'm also going to go ahead and repeat the same process on the other back piece. I'll fold my back piece right side facing the right side on that nipple to nipple line that we drew, and I'm going to go ahead and follow that. So now for the front piece, I'm going to also go ahead and fold my fabric into 2 like this, right side facing the right side on that nipple to nipple line, and we also go ahead and sew on that line. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the 2 that side. Okay, and now for the bust dart, I'm going to go ahead and fold the both lines into 2 like this, as you can see, and I'm going to go ahead and sew straight down, starting for the beginning of that my dart straight down, and we are going to go ahead and do the same on the other side. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my sewing machine and do that. So this is what you should be getting after creating your darts on your front piece. So this is what my waist dart is looking like, and also this is what my bust dart is looking like. Okay, so when ironing your front piece, make sure that that bust dart is facing down. Okay, and if you turn over your front piece, this is what it should be looking like. And I've also created the dart on my back piece like this, and if I turn over my back piece to the right side, this is what it's also going to be looking like. Okay, so you can also go ahead and iron it down. So now the next thing we are going to do is to place the 2 back pieces together, right side facing the right side like this, and I went ahead to pin them down. So guys, after pinning it down, the next thing now we are going to do is to go ahead and mark out our zipper allowance on the zip side. So remember, I used 2 inches for my zipper allowance, and I'm going to go ahead and mark 2 inches straight down that zipper line, and I'm going to go ahead with my chalk and connect the marks together. Okay, after that I'm going to go ahead now and sew a loose stitch on that line straight down. Okay guys, so as you can see, I've sewed down the zipper allowance, and I also went ahead to iron it down, and this is what it looks like if I turn over my back piece to the right side. So now the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead and join the shoulder together with the front piece. Okay, so now I'm going to bring my front piece together, right side facing the right side like this, and I'm going to go ahead and sew on that shoulder line by 1/2 inch on both sides. Okay guys, so I've gone ahead and I've sewed down the shoulder line by 1/2 inch, as you can see. So now the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead and join the back piece to the front piece on the sides. Okay, so you go ahead and properly place the sides together and pin it down, and you're going to go ahead and sew it by your sewing allowance. So I gave a sewing allowance of about 1.75 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and sew on both sides by 1.75 inches. Okay, so you can use your chalk and mark out your sewing allowance, then go ahead and sew. Okay guys, so as you can see, I've gone ahead and I've sewed down the sides of my dress by about 1.75 inches, which is my sewing allowance, and I also went ahead to iron down the sides. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and turn over my fabric to the right side like this, and this is what it's going to be looking like. Okay, so now the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead and determine how high we want our cuff to be and where we want our cuff highness to be. So I want mine to be at the right side. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead with my tape and measure upward by 5 inches from the full length. So that is how high I want the cuff to start from. Okay, and from that 5 inches mark, I'm going to go ahead and create a curve meeting the full length on the other side like this. Okay, so after creating my curve like this, I'm going to go ahead with my scissors and cut through that line. So go ahead and do the same for yours. Okay, so now that we have created our curve, this is what our dress is going to be looking like. Very neat and very clean. Okay, so now the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead and measure out the full length of our dress from that right side that we cut our curve from. Okay, so make sure you take your measurement from the shorter side of the dress, and I got 23 inches as the full length. Okay, so we are going to be making use of this when cutting the down part of our dress. Okay, so now the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead and loose up that stitching allowance at the zipper side. Okay, and you're going to be getting something like this. Okay, so now the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead and measure out the full length of our bodice on the downside like this. Okay, so you're going to start your measurement from the very edge of your zipper allowance to the end of your zipper allowance on the other side. Okay, and I got 49 inches. So we'll be using that length to form our gathers. Okay guys, so this is the fabric I'll be using for the gathers on the downside of my dress. And how to get the length you're going to be using is you're going to measure out the full length of your dress minus that length that we got on the upper bodice. So for example, now the full length of my dress is 64 inches. So 64 minus that 22 inches that I got for my upper bodice, and I'll be getting 42 inches. And I'm going to add extra 1.5 inches for both sewing and folding allowance. So in total, I cut out 43.5 inches for the full length. Okay, so I also went ahead to sew a loose stitch straight down the width of my fabric. Okay, and when sewing, make sure that your thread does not cut until you're done. So now the next thing I'm going to do is on the edge of that my loose stitch like this, I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the thread just few times. Okay, so after that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pick one of the thread like this, and I'm going to go ahead and pull my fabric. Okay, so when doing this, be careful not to cut your thread, because once you have cut your thread, you'll spoil the whole thing. Okay, so pull your thread a little bit, then push back your fabric just the way I'm doing it. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same thing on the other side. So we are going to be doing this on the both side till we have gotten to the middle, or until the gathers have met each other. Okay, so now make sure that the width of your gathers is the same thing with the width of your upper bodice for joining. Okay, so mine is 49 inches as we have measured earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure the gathers is also at that 49 inches. Okay guys, so this is it after creating my gathers, and you're going to be left with 2 long threads at the both side of the fabric, as you can see. So now the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead and join these gathers to our upper bodice. Okay, so now bring my upper bodice and place it together, right side facing the right side. So how we are going to attach these gathers is we're going to measure out our zipper allowance. Mine is 2 inches. So on the gathers, we are also going to make sure that the edge of the gathers fabric is also free by 2 inches. Okay, and you're going to do that on the both sides. So we are going to go ahead and place this our gathers fabric on our upper bodice like this, right side facing the right side, and we are going to go ahead and pin them down. Okay, so go ahead and pin them down together like this all around. Okay, so I'm also going to drop a link for the video tutorial of how I made this wrist pin cushion holder that you're seeing on my hands. So if you want to know how I made it, it's also going to be on the description box. Okay, so this is it after pinning the fabrics together. So I'm going to go to my sewing machine and sew straight down. Okay, and after that, I'm going to go ahead and fold down the downside of my dress like this, and I'm going to go to my sewing machine and sew straight down. Okay guys, so I just wanted to show you how to sew down your gathers to your dress. Okay, so if you notice, I am stitching down before that 1/2 inch we use in creating our gathers. And also make sure you don't cut out that long thread until you're finished stitching down your gathers to your dress. Okay, so go ahead and do this gently till you're done. Okay guys, so I've gone ahead and I've sewed down my gathers to my dress. As you can see, this is what it's going to be looking like. So I'm going to go ahead now and cut out that long threads at both sides. All right, and I've also folded down the hem or the downside of my dress, as you can see. So now the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead and join the 2 back piece on that zipper allowance. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and join my 2 back piece together like this, right side facing the right side, and I'm going to go ahead and measure out how long I want my zipper to be. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and mark it like this. So I'm going to go ahead and fix my zip on that my zipper allowance line, which is 2 inches. Okay, but first, from that line that I marked, I'm going to go ahead and sew straight down by 2 inches. Okay, so from that line, go ahead and sew straight down by your sewing allowance. Then you go ahead now and fix your zip. All right. Okay guys, so I've gone ahead and I fixed my zip, as you can see, and I fixed an invisible zip. You can make use of any zip that you want. All right, so now that I'm done fixing my zip, the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and work on the armhole. Okay, so for the armhole, make sure your dress is turned to the right side like this, and we are going to bring a bias. So this is what a bias look like. Okay, so make sure you get a matching bias with your fabric. So now what we are going to do now is open up the bias like this, and you're going to open it up like this, and you're going to fold down the end. Okay, so fold down the end like this, and you're going to sew on the right side of the bias folding, and you're going to go ahead and sew it all around the armhole. Okay guys, so this is what I mean. I opened up my bias like this, and I folded down the end of the bias. So I'm also going to go ahead and sew on that right side of the bias all around. Okay, so just go ahead and repeat the same thing that I'm doing like this. So now that we have gotten close to this end that we folded in, we're going to still take our bias and exceed it by a few inches like this. So this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to go ahead and cut off my bias, and I'm going to fold down this end like this and sew straight down. Okay, so make sure you double stitch on it. All right, so now this is what we are going to be getting after sewing down our bias, and I also did that on my both armholes, as you can see. So now the next thing we are going to do is to turn over our bias to the wrong side of our dress like this. So we'll go ahead and turn it over like this, and we are going to go ahead and stitch straight down on that end. Very simple. So we are going to do that on the both armholes of our dress. Okay, so this is what I mean by stitching it down. So I turn over the bias to the wrong side of my dress like this, and on that edge of my bias I went ahead to sew straight down. Okay, so go ahead and repeat the same process on the both armholes of our dress. So after I was done, this is what the armhole of my dress look like. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've covered down the rough edges of the armhole with my bias like this, and also this is what the inside will be looking like, very neat and clean. So I'm going to go ahead and iron down this dress and put it on so that you can see what it looks like on me. Okay guys, so this is how the dress looks like on me. Very simple and stylish. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I hope you love this tutorial. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I do hope to see you in my next video. Until next time, bye bye.